The sun was warm against my face as it slipped through the big window in my office, casting little golden lines across my desk. I sat there, holding my coffee mug, the steam curling up and mixing with the smell of the fresh brew. My eyes were locked on my laptop screen, reading the email over and over again, like I couldn't believe it was real. After all those years of grinding, long nights hunched over spreadsheets, missing dinners with Miranda, skipping my nephew's birthday parties just to study, I'd finally done it. Caldwell and Royce, one of the fanciest investment firms in the whole country, had offered me the job of my dreams, senior financial analyst. My chest swelled up with pride as I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of it sink in. This wasn't just a job. It was everything I'd been working for, everything I'd promised Miranda we'd have one day. Security, a good life, a future where we didn't have to worry about bills or scraping by. I took another sip of coffee, imagining how I'd tell her. She'd probably scream and throw her arms around me, her brown eyes lighting up like they did when we first got married. Maybe I'd take her out tonight. Somewhere nice, like that Italian place she loved with the candlelit tables and the pasta she always said was better than her mom's. I could already hear her laughing, teasing me about how I'd finally made it big. I shut my laptop, grabbed my keys, and headed for the car, my mind buzzing with ideas. The drive home felt lighter than usual, the city blurring past me in a mix of honking horns and afternoon sunlight. I turned up the radio, some old rock song filling the air, and I tapped my fingers on the steering wheel, grinning like an idiot. This was it, our moment. After all the sacrifices, all the times I'd come home late and found her asleep on the couch waiting for me, we were finally going to cash in on the dream. I pictured her face when I'd walk through the door. "Miranda," I'd say, "you're not going to believe this." Maybe I'd even pick up some flowers on the way, those pink roses she liked. My heart was racing, not from nerves, but from excitement. I couldn't wait to see her, to feel her hand in mine as we talked about what this meant for us. A bigger house maybe, or that trip to the coast she'd always wanted. I'd given up so much to get here. Time with her, time with friends, even time for myself. But it was worth it. I could feel it in my bones. This job was going to change everything. As I pulled into our street, the little brick house we'd called home for 5 years came into view, and I parked the car, still smiling. I grabbed my bag and stepped out, the cool breeze brushing against my face. I had no idea, not even a hint, that everything I thought I knew was about to come crashing down around me. My world, the one I'd built so carefully, was already starting to crack, and I was too happy to see it. The walk up to the front door felt normal, familiar. I jingled my keys in my hand, thinking about how I'd start the conversation. Maybe I'd just blurt it out, or maybe I'd build up to it, make it a surprise. I turned the knob and stepped inside, the smell of Miranda's lavender candle hitting me like it always did. "Hey babe, I'm home," I called out, kicking off my shoes. The house was quiet, quieter than usual. No TV humming, no clatter of dishes from the kitchen. I set my bag down by the couch and loosened my tie, still riding that high from the email. I figured she might be upstairs, maybe reading one of those mystery books she loved. I was about to head up when I heard her footsteps coming down. My grin widened. This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for all day. I opened my mouth to tell her, the words right there on my tongue, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the way she looked at me when she came into view, or maybe it was just a gut feeling I couldn't shake. Either way, I didn't know it yet, but that email, that job, that dream, it was all about to slip through my fingers, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I stood there, waiting for her to say something, to smile back at me like she usually did. But she didn't. She just stood at the bottom of the stairs, her arms crossed, her face calm in a way that made my stomach twist. I brushed it off, chalking it up to a long day for her too. "You won't believe what happened," I started, stepping closer. "I got the job, Miranda. Caldwell and Royce. Senior financial analyst." I waited for her to react, for the hug, the laugh, anything. But she just nodded, like I'd told her the weather was nice outside. "That's great, Grant," she said, her voice flat. I frowned, confused. "Great? That's it. This is huge, babe. This is what we've been waiting for." She looked away, her fingers tapping against her arm, and that's when I felt it, the first real pang of something being wrong. I didn't know what it was yet, but it was there, sharp and cold, cutting through my excitement. I took a breath, trying to keep the mood light. I was thinking we could celebrate tonight. Maybe dinner at Luigi's? My treat. She finally met my eyes, and there was something in them I couldn't read. Sure, she said, but it didn't sound like she meant it. I opened my mouth to ask what was going on, but my phone buzzed in my pocket, cutting me off. I ignored it, focusing on her. You okay? I asked softer this time. She shrugged, turning toward the kitchen. Yeah, fine. Just tired. I watched her go, that uneasy feeling growing bigger, heavier. I didn't know it then, but that phone buzzing in my pocket wasn't just a distraction. It was the start of everything falling apart. And I was about to find out just how much. I was still reeling from Miranda's cold reaction as I sat in the car, my hands tight on the steering wheel, the leather creaking under my grip. The afternoon sun was dipping lower now, painting the sky with streaks of orange, but I barely noticed. My phone rang, cutting through the fog in my head, and I fumbled to pull it out of my pocket, expecting it to be someone from Caldwell and Royce with the final confirmation about my start date. I'd been waiting for that call all day, imagining the details. Where to park, who to meet, what to wear. I glanced at the screen, saw an unfamiliar number, and hit answer, pressing the phone to my ear. Hello, this is Grant, I said, trying to sound professional even though my gut was still churning from Miranda's weird attitude. The voice on the other end was deep, clipped, and way too serious. Mr. Grant, this is Paul Reynolds, hiring manager at Caldwell and Royce. My heart jumped. Here it was, the moment I'd been waiting for. But then he kept talking, and every word hit me like a punch. We received notice from your wife that you're declining the position due to personal reasons. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The car felt too small all of a sudden, the air too thick. What? I managed to choke out, my voice sounding weak even to me. That's a mistake. I never declined the job. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Paul paused, and I could hear papers rustling on his end, like he was double-checking something. She was very clear, Mr. Grant, he said, his tone flat. She also recommended another candidate in your place. Another candidate? My head spun, and I gripped the wheel harder, my knuckles turning white. What are you talking about? Who? I demanded, but I already had a sick feeling I knew where this was going. Paul hesitated again, then said, I'm sorry, Grant. That's all I can say. The decision's been made. I barely heard him finish before I muttered a quick, thanks, and ended the call, my hands shaking as I dropped the phone into the passenger seat. Miranda. She'd done this. She'd called them, lied to them, taken my job, my dream, and handed it to someone else. I didn't know why, but I was going to find out. I hit the gas, the tires squealing as I peeled out of the parking lot and sped toward home. The streets blurred past me, but all I could see was her face. Those brown eyes, that flat nod when I'd told her the news. She'd known. She'd already known because she'd made it happen. My chest burned with a mix of confusion and rage, and by the time I pulled into our driveway, I was practically shaking. I slammed the car door shut and stormed up to the house, not even bothering with my usual routine of kicking off my shoes or hanging my keys. The front door banged open, and there she was, Miranda, standing in the living room, her arms crossed again, a smirk on her face like she'd been waiting for me. Hey, honey, she said, her voice dripping with something fake and sweet that made my skin crawl. You're home early. I stopped dead, staring at her, my fists clenching at my sides. What did you do? I asked, my voice low, barely holding it together. She tilted her head, like she was playing some game. What do you mean? She said, but that smirk stayed put, and I knew she wasn't fooling anyone. You called Caldwell and Royce, I said, stepping closer, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. You told them I didn't want the job. You gave it to someone else. Her smirk didn't even flicker. She shrugged, casual as anything, and said, that job was too much for you, Grant. I did you a favor. A favor? I felt the air rush out of me, like she'd kicked me in the stomach. You had no right. I started, but she cut me off, waving a hand like I was some annoying kid. Relax, she said. My new boyfriend, Evan, needed a job, and since we're ending things anyway, I figured he'd benefit more. I stood there, frozen, my brain scrambling to catch up. New boyfriend? Ending things. I couldn't even get the words out before she turned, grabbed a stack of papers from the coffee table, and tossed them at me. They hit the floor with a soft thud, divorce papers, the black ink glaring up at me like a slap in the face. Sign them, she said, her voice cold now. You'll get over it. I stared at the papers, then back at her, my whole world tilting sideways. Ending things. I repeated, my voice cracking. She just nodded, like it was nothing, like 8 years of marriage meant zero to her. Evan's better for me, she said, shrugging again. You were always too soft. Soft. I'd worked my ass off for her, for us, and she was throwing it all away for some guy named Evan. My hands balled into fists, and I wanted to yell, to scream at her, but all I could do was stand there, the weight of her words crushing me. She'd taken my job, my future, and given it to him. She wasn't just leaving me. She was stripping me bare, taking everything I'd built. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw the truth. That smirk, that casual cruelty, it wasn't just a bad day or a fight. This was who she was now, maybe who she'd always been, and I'd been too blind to see it. You can't do this, I said, my voice shaking with anger. She laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. I already did. I turned and walked out, the divorce papers still on the floor, my head pounding with every step. I got back in the car and just sat there, the engine off, the silence pressing in around me. My dream job was gone. My marriage was over. And Miranda, she'd planned it all, stabbed me in the back without a second thought. I didn't know what to do, where to go, but one thing was clear. She thought I'd roll over and take it. She thought I was weak. As I stared out the windshield, the anger started to shift, hardening into something else, something sharp and focused. She'd taken everything from me, but I wasn't done. Not yet. I didn't know how, but I was going to fight back. She'd see soon enough that she'd underestimated me, and I'd make damn sure she regretted it. I didn't know how long I sat in the car, the darkness creeping in around me as the streetlights flickered on one by one. My hands were still gripping the steering wheel, even though the engine was off, and my knuckles ached from holding on so tight. The shock of Miranda's words kept replaying in my head like a bad song I couldn't turn off. Her smirk, the divorce papers hitting the floor, the way she said, Evan, like he was some prize she'd won. My job, my marriage, my whole life. It was all slipping away, and I couldn't wrap my mind around it. I'd never felt so lost, not even when I failed my first big exam in college or when my dad walked out on us when I was a kid. Back then, I'd had a plan, a way to push through. Now, I had nothing, just a hollow ache in my chest and a wife who'd turned into a stranger overnight. I kept going over it, every little detail, trying to figure out how I'd missed this. Had there been signs? Late-night phone calls she brushed off as work? Times she'd come home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine? I'd trusted her, believed in us, and she'd been plotting behind my back, handing my dream job to her boyfriend like it was nothing. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. But under that anger was something worse, helplessness. What was I supposed to do now? Sign the papers and let her win? Crawl away with my tail between my legs? I couldn't even think straight. My head was such a mess. I needed to talk to someone, anyone, who could help me make sense of this. That's when I thought of Tobias. He'd been my best friend since high school, the guy who always had my back, the one who'd tell me the truth even when I didn't want to hear it. If anyone could help me figure this out, it was him. I started the car, the engine rumbling to life, and drove to his place, my hands still shaky on the wheel. The city lights streaked by, but I barely saw them, my mind stuck on Miranda's smirk and those damn papers. Tobias lived in a little apartment downtown, a cluttered place with mismatched furniture and stacks of books everywhere. When I pulled up, I saw his light on, and relief hit me like a wave. I didn't even text him first, just parked, climbed the stairs, and knocked on his door, my heart thudding in my chest. He opened it a few seconds later, his curly hair a mess, a beer in his hand. Grant. What's up, man? He said, his eyebrows shooting up when he saw my face. I must have looked like hell, because he stepped aside right away and waved me in. You okay? You look like you just got hit by a truck. I stepped inside, the familiar smell of his place, old leather and coffee, hitting me as I dropped onto his lumpy couch. Miranda, I said, my voice rough, like it didn't belong to me. She screwed me over, Tobias. Big time. He shut the door and sat across from me in his beat-up armchair, leaning forward, his beer forgotten on the table. What happened? He asked, his eyes narrowing. I took a deep breath and let it all spill out. The job offer, the call from Paul, Miranda's betrayal, Evan, the divorce papers. Every word felt like a weight lifting off me, but it didn't make the hurt go away. When I finished, Tobias just stared at me, his mouth open a little, like he couldn't believe it either. "Holy crap, Grant," he said finally, shaking his head. "This isn't just betrayal. This is sabotage. She didn't just cheat on you. She blew up your whole life." Hearing him say it out loud made it real, sharper somehow, like a knife twisting in my gut. "Yeah," I said, running a hand through my hair. "And she thinks I'm just going to take it. Like I'm too weak to do anything about it." Tobias leaned back, his face hard now, the shock turning into something else. Anger, maybe, or determination. "She's wrong," he said, his voice steady. "You're not weak. You're pissed, and you've got every right to be. But you can't just sit there and let her walk all over you." I nodded, feeling that anger bubbling up again, hotter this time. "I want her to pay," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "I want her to feel what she did to me." Tobias didn't flinch. He just looked at me, his eyes steady, like he was sizing me up. "Good," he said. "Then let's figure out how to make that happen. But you need a plan, man. You can't just go off half-cocked and give her more ammo." He was right. I knew he was right, but I didn't even know where to start. My head was still spinning, my emotions all over the place. "What do I do?" I asked, hating how desperate I sounded. Tobias took a sip of his beer, thinking, then set it down with a thud. "First, you need to get your head straight," he said. "You're hurt, you're mad, but you've got to focus. She took your job, yeah, but you're smart, Grant. You've got skills. They can't take that away. And the divorce? That's a fight you can win if you play it right." I listened, letting his words sink in, and for the first time since that call from Paul, I felt a tiny spark of hope. "You think I can get the job back?" I asked. He shrugged. "Maybe, maybe not. But you can sure as hell make sure she doesn't get away clean. Start by finding out more about Evan, about what she told them. Dig into it." I nodded again, slower this time, the gears in my mind starting to turn. He was right. I needed a plan, not just blind rage. Miranda thought she'd won, thought I'd just fade away. But I wasn't going to let her. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to fight back, piece by piece. "Thanks, Tobias," I said, my voice steadier now. He grinned, a little crooked, and picked up his beer again. "Anytime, man. You've got this. She's going to wish she never messed with you." I didn't smile back, but I felt something shift inside me, something solid, like a foundation I could build on. I left his place that night with my head still a mess, but it wasn't just pain anymore. There was purpose there too. Miranda had taken everything, but I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I'd find a way to make her regret it, and I'd start tomorrow. I woke up the next morning on Tobias's couch, my neck stiff from the lumpy cushions, the taste of last night's anger still bitter in my mouth. The apartment was quiet, just the hum of the fridge and the faint sound of traffic outside. Tobias was already gone, probably off to his early shift at the garage, but he'd left a note on the coffee table. "Call me later. Don't do anything stupid." I crumpled it in my hand and tossed it aside, sitting up with a groan. My head ached, not from drinking, but from the endless loop of Miranda's smirk and those divorce papers playing in my mind all night. I couldn't stay here forever, crashing at his place like some lost puppy. I needed to move, to do something, anything, to take back control. She'd stolen my job, my marriage, my whole damn future, and I wasn't going to let it end there. I grabbed my phone, my keys, and headed out, the cool morning air hitting me as I stepped onto the street. The drive back to our house, her house now, I guess, was short, but it felt like forever. I kept thinking about what Tobias said. I needed a plan. Blind rage wasn't going to cut it, no matter how much I wanted to storm in and yell until my voice gave out. I parked a block away, not wanting her to see me yet, and just sat there, staring at the little brick place we'd called home. The curtains were still drawn, the lights off. Maybe she was asleep, or maybe she was with Evan, laughing about how she'd screwed me over. The thought made my stomach twist, but it also lit a fire under me. I couldn't just sit here feeling sorry for myself. I pulled out my phone and dialed Caldwell and Royce, my fingers shaking as I punched in the number I'd memorized from all those application emails. It rang twice before a woman's voice answered, bright and professional. "Caldwell and Royce, how can I assist you today?" I took a breath, steadying myself. "Hi, this is Grant Miller. I need to speak with Paul Reynolds, please." She put me on hold, some bland elevator music filling the silence, and I tapped my foot against the car floor, waiting. When Paul's voice finally came on, It was clipped, like he was in a hurry. "Grant, what's this about?" he said. No hello, no small talk. I swallowed hard, keeping my tone even. "Paul, there's been a huge misunderstanding. I never declined the job. My wife, ex-wife, called you without my knowledge. She lied. I want that position. It's mine." There was a pause, a long one, and I could hear him breathing on the other end. "Grant," he said finally, "I don't know what's going on with you and your wife, but the position's filled. We've moved on." His words hit me like a brick, but I didn't back down. "Filled by who?" "Evan. The guy she recommended." "Paul, I earned that job. You know my work, my record. This isn't fair." He sighed, and I could picture him rubbing his temples like he did in meetings when things got messy. "It's done, Grant. I'm sorry. Take it up with her." I clenched my jaw, the phone creaking in my hand. "Thanks for nothing," I muttered, hanging up before he could say more. I slammed my fist against the dashboard, the sting shooting up my arm, but it didn't help. They weren't going to fix it. The job was gone, handed to Evan on a silver platter because of Miranda's lies. I leaned back in the seat, staring at the ceiling of the car, my mind racing. I wasn't surprised, not really. Companies like that don't backtrack once they've made a move, but it still burned. I wasn't giving up, though. If they wouldn't listen, I'd find another way. Miranda wasn't going to get away with this, and neither was Evan. I just needed to figure out how to hit back. That night, I was back at the house. Our house, grabbing some clothes and stuff I'd left behind. I'd been staying out of her way, but I couldn't avoid it forever. I used my key, stepping inside quietly, hoping she was out. No such luck. She was in the kitchen, her voice floating through the hall, loud and carefree. I froze, listening, my bag half zipped on the couch. "Oh, baby, don't worry," she said, laughing that high, sharp laugh I used to think was cute. "Grant won't do anything. He's always been too weak to fight back." My blood went cold, then hot, rushing to my face as I stood there, rooted to the spot. She was on the phone, probably with Evan, talking about me like I was some pathetic loser she'd already forgotten. The bag slipped from my hand, hitting the floor with a thud, but she didn't hear it, too wrapped up in her little victory dance. "He'll sign the papers and slink off," she went on. "Trust me, he's done." Weak. That word stuck in me like a splinter, sharp and deep. I'd spent years proving I wasn't weak, working late, pushing through every obstacle, building a life for us. And she thought she could just wipe it all away? I stepped closer to the kitchen, my hands balling into fists, but I stopped myself. Yelling wouldn't do it. She'd just laugh harder, twist it into more proof I was nothing. No, I needed something bigger, something she couldn't shrug off. That's when it hit me, not a plan yet, but a promise. I turned away from the kitchen, grabbed my bag, and walked out, her voice still echoing in my ears. She thought I was weak? Fine. Let her think that. I'd use it. Let her underestimate me until I was ready to strike. Back in the car, I sat with the engine off, the quiet wrapping around me. I wasn't weak. I knew that, deep down, but I'd been too trusting, too soft with her. Not anymore. She'd regret those words, that laugh, every second she spent thinking she'd won. I didn't know how yet, but I'd find a way. Maybe I'd dig into Evan, see who he really was, what dirt I could turn up. Maybe I'd go back to Caldwell and Royce, push harder, find someone higher up who'd listen. Or maybe I'd hit her where it hurt most, those divorce papers she thought I'd signed so easily. I'd fight for everything, leave her with nothing. As I started the car and pulled away, that promise settled into me, solid and real. She'd see soon enough. I wasn't done fighting, not by a long shot. And when I came for her, she wouldn't know what hit her. I was still fuming from Miranda's phone call with Evan, her words about me being weak bouncing around in my head like a taunt I couldn't shake. It had been a few days since I overheard her, and I'd spent every minute since then trying to figure out my next move. I'd been crashing at Tobias's place, sleeping on that lumpy couch, my stuff shoved into a duffel bag like I was some college kid again. The house, our house, wasn't home anymore, not with her there, plotting with her boyfriend and laughing at me behind my back. I'd gone back that afternoon to grab more of my things, figuring I'd slip in and out while she was out. I didn't want to see her, didn't trust myself not to lose it if she smirked at me again. The plan was simple. Get my clothes, my laptop, a few books, and get out. I pulled up to the house, saw her car gone, and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Maybe luck was on my side for once. I let myself in with my key, the familiar creak of the door hitting me like a memory I didn't want. The place smelled the same, lavender and coffee, but it felt different, colder. I moved fast, heading to the bedroom, grabbing shirts and jeans from the closet and stuffing them into my bag. My laptop was still on the desk where I'd left it, and I snagged that too, along with a couple of finance books I'd been studying for the job I'd never get to start. I was halfway through zipping up the bag when I heard the front door open, and my stomach dropped. She was back. I froze, listening as her heels clicked against the hardwood, her voice humming some tune like she didn't have a care in the world. I thought about bolting out the back, but then her phone rang, loud and shrill, cutting through the quiet. I stayed put, hidden in the bedroom, my heart thudding as I heard her answer it. "Hey," she said, her tone bright and bubbly, probably Evan again. But then her voice changed, tightened up, like she'd been caught off guard. "Paul. Why are you calling?" she started, and I perked up, recognizing the name. Paul Reynolds, the hiring manager from Caldwell and Royce. My pulse kicked up a notch, and I edged closer to the bedroom door, keeping out of sight but close enough to hear. A man's voice boomed through the speaker, so loud I didn't even need to strain. "What the hell did you do, Miranda?" Paul shouted, and I could tell he was pissed, really pissed. I held my breath, waiting, as she stammered back. I don't know what you're talking about." Her usual confidence was gone, replaced by something shaky, and it felt good to hear it. Paul didn't let up. "Evan is a complete disaster. He embarrassed us at a client meeting today. He doesn't even understand basic financial analysis. We looked into it, and it turns out the credentials you gave us were all your husband's." I smirked, leaning against the wall, my bag forgotten on the floor. So that's what she'd done, stolen my resume, my work, my whole damn career, and passed it off as Evan's. I'd suspected she'd lied to get him the job, but hearing it confirmed, straight from Paul's mouth, was like a shot of adrenaline. Miranda's face. I could picture it turning white, her eyes wide as she tried to scramble for an excuse. "Paul, I just thought," she started, but he cut her off, his voice like a hammer. "I trusted you, Miranda. You told me Evan was some hotshot analyst, and now I look like an idiot for hiring him. This is on you." She didn't say anything back, just made a little whimpering sound, and I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing out loud. Karma was real, and it was hitting her hard. I stayed there, crouched by the door, soaking it all in. Paul was furious, and Evan was screwing up, big time. All that work I'd put in, the late nights, the endless spreadsheets, the stuff Miranda had mocked me for, it was coming back to bite her now. She'd thought she could just hand my life to her boyfriend and walk away clean, but it was falling apart already. I could hear her breathing fast, like she was panicking, and part of me wanted to step out and watch her squirm. But I didn't. Not yet. I wanted to see how this played out, let her dig herself deeper. The call ended with a sharp click, and I heard her curse under her breath, her heels pacing the living room. She was rattled, and I loved it. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I had the upper hand. Not much, but enough to keep me going. I grabbed my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and slipped out the back door before she could notice me. The cool air hit my face as I walked to the car, a grin tugging at my lips. Evan was a disaster, Paul was pissed, and Miranda was starting to see the cracks in her perfect little plan. I tossed my stuff in the back seat and slid behind the wheel, my mind racing with what this meant. Caldwell and Royce was figuring out they'd been duped, and it wouldn't take long for them to connect the dots back to her. Maybe they'd call me, maybe they wouldn't, but either way, she was losing her grip, and I was still in the game. I started the engine, the rumble steadying me, and drove off, that smirk still on my face. This was just the beginning. She'd underestimated me, thought I'd roll over and take it, but I was done playing nice. Whatever came next, I'd be ready, and she'd be the one regretting it. As I pulled onto the highway, I couldn't stop thinking about how good it felt to hear her falter. That whimper, that crack in her voice, it was proof she wasn't untouchable. She'd built this whole betrayal on lies, and now those lies were crumbling. I didn't have a full plan yet, but I didn't need one right this second. What I had was momentum, a little spark of hope that I could turn this around. Miranda had taken everything from me, or tried to, but she'd messed up, and I was going to make sure it cost her. I didn't know how long it'd take, or what I'd have to do, but I was in it now, all the way. She'd see soon enough that I wasn't the weak one. Not anymore. I drove away from the house with my heart still racing, the echo of Paul's furious voice ringing in my ears like a victory bell. Miranda's plan was unraveling, and I'd been there to hear the first thread snap. Evan couldn't cut it. My credentials had been exposed as the lie behind his hiring, and now she was scrambling. I could still hear that little whimper she'd let out, the way her voice shook when Paul tore into her. It wasn't much, not yet, but it was enough to keep me going, to make me feel like I wasn't just some guy she could toss aside. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, and let that feeling settle into me as I headed back to Tobias's place. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the road, but inside me, something was lighting up. For the first time since this whole mess started, I wasn't just reacting, I was starting to see a way forward. When I got to Tobias's, I dropped my bag by the couch and paced the tiny living room, my mind buzzing. I couldn't sit still, not with everything spinning in my head. Paul's words kept coming back. The credentials you gave us were all your husband's. She'd stolen my work, my years of effort, and handed them to Evan like a gift. And now it was blowing up in her face. I stopped pacing and grabbed my phone, replaying the moment in my mind. Paul had been mad, really mad, and that meant trouble for her. Maybe for Evan too. I wondered how bad it had gotten, how much damage Evan had done at that client meeting. Part of me wanted to call Paul back, ask for details, but I held off. I needed to be smart about this, not rush in and tip my hand. Instead, I texted Tobias, big update. Miranda's screwed. Call me when you're off. I hit send and flopped onto the couch, staring at the ceiling, letting the pieces fall into place. I didn't have to wait long. My phone rang not 10 minutes later, and I picked it up, expecting Tobias. But it wasn't him. It was Miranda's voice, sharp and panicked, cutting through the line. Grant, where are you? She demanded. No hello, no pretending to be nice. I sat up, caught off guard, my pulse kicking up again. Why do you care? I shot back, keeping my tone cold. She didn't answer right away, just breathed hard into the phone, like she was trying to figure out what to say. Paul called me, she said finally, her voice quieter now, almost small. He's pissed. Evan messed up bad, and they know I lied about his resume. I smirked, leaning back against the cushions, savoring every word. Yeah, I heard, I said, letting her know I'd been there, that I'd caught her in the act. She went silent, and I could almost see her face, pale, eyes wide, realizing she'd been caught. You were in the house? She asked, her voice trembling now. Doesn't matter, I said, brushing it off. What matters is you're in deep shit, Miranda. You stole my work, gave it to your boyfriend, and now it's falling apart. How's that feel? She didn't answer, just made that same whimpering sound I'd heard earlier, and it hit me like a jolt. She was scared. Really scared. Paul's not done, she said after a beat, her words tumbling out fast. He said I cost the firm a fortune, that they're looking into it. He's going to call you, Grant. He said if I've got any dignity left, I better pray you don't press charges. Press charges? The idea hadn't even crossed my mind until she said it, but now it was there, glowing like a neon sign. Fraud. Theft. She'd crossed a line, and maybe I could make it stick. I stood up, pacing again, my mind racing. Press charges. I repeated, testing the weight of it. You think I won't? You took everything from me, Miranda, my job, my life, and gave it to Evan. You think I'm just going to let that slide? She started to say something, but I cut her off, my voice rising. No, you listen. You thought I was weak, right? Too soft to fight back? Well, guess what? You messed up. Evan's a joke, and now they know it. You're not getting out of this clean. She whimpered again, louder this time, and I could tell she was crumbling. Grant, please, she said, her tone shifting to something desperate. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought Evan could handle it. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Yeah, well, he couldn't. And neither can you. I hung up before she could say more, my hands shaking as I tossed the phone onto the couch. She was begging now, pleading with me, and it felt good, damn good, to hear her like that. For months, she'd held all the power, smirking and scheming while I scrambled to keep up. But now she was the one on the ropes, and I was the one calling the shots. My phone buzzed again almost right away. Paul this time, his name flashing on the screen. I picked it up, steadying myself. Hey, Paul, I said, keeping it casual. Got your call. I'd love to come in and talk. He didn't waste time. Grant, we've got a mess here, he said, his voice tight. Evan's out. We're still sorting it, but I need to see you. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. I'll be there, I said, and hung up. I stood there, staring at the phone, a grin spreading across my face. Evan was gone, Paul was reaching out, and Miranda was falling apart. I could hear her voice in my head, that desperate please, and it hit me. She'd lost control. For the first time in our marriage, she couldn't manipulate me, couldn't twist me into doing what she wanted. I walked to Tobias's tiny kitchen, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and cracked it open, the cold fizz calming my nerves. Tomorrow, I'd go to Caldwell and Royce, see what Paul had to say. Maybe I'd get the job back, maybe not. But either way, I'd make sure Miranda paid. She'd underestimated me, thought I'd just fade away, but I was done being her doormat. As I took a sip, the taste sharp and bitter, I felt stronger than I had in weeks. This was my fight now, and I was ready to win it. I barely slept that night, my mind too wired from Miranda's panic call and Paul's invitation to come in. I kept replaying it all, her whimpering, Paul's tight voice, the fact that Evan was already out. It was like the pieces were finally moving in my favor, and I couldn't stop thinking about what tomorrow might bring. I was up before the sun, pacing Tobias's apartment, the floorboards creaking under my feet. I showered, shaved, put on my best suit, the one I'd worn to the Caldwell and Royce interview, and stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at myself. My eyes were tired, a little red, but there was something else there too, something hard, determined. I wasn't the same guy who'd walked into that house a week ago, grinning like an idiot about a job offer. Miranda had changed that, but now I was changing it back. I grabbed my keys and headed out, the morning air crisp against my face as I drove downtown. Caldwell and Royce's office was all glass and steel, a towering thing that gleamed in the early light. I parked, straightened my tie, and walked in, my stomach twisting with nerves and hope. The receptionist, a young woman with a tight smile, waved me up to the 10th floor, where Paul's office was. I rode the elevator alone, the quiet hum doing nothing to calm me down. When the doors opened, Paul was waiting, his face grim but not unfriendly. "Grant," he said, shaking my hand, his grip firm. "Come on in. Robert's waiting too." "Robert?" My heart skipped. Robert Calloway, the CEO. This wasn't just a chat with the hiring manager. This was big. I followed Paul down a sleek hallway, my shoes clicking on the polished floor, until we reached a conference room with a long table and a view of the city stretching out below. Robert Calloway sat at the head of the table, a tall guy with silver hair and sharp eyes that locked onto me the second I walked in. He didn't smile, just nodded as I took a seat across from him, Paul settling in beside me. "Grant," Robert said, his voice deep and steady. "Your credentials are impeccable. Your hiring was well-earned." I blinked, caught off guard by the compliment, but I nodded back. "Thank you, sir," I said, keeping my tone even. "I worked hard for it." Paul cleared his throat, shifting in his chair. "We'd like to reinstate our original offer," he said, and my chest tightened, a rush of relief hitting me so hard I almost forgot to breathe. "The senior financial analyst position. It's yours if you still want it." I stared at him, then at Robert, waiting for the catch, but Robert just leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table. "We made a mistake," he said. "Not with you, with what came after. We're fixing it." I took a slow breath, letting it sink in. The job was mine again. After everything Miranda had done, all her scheming, I was back where I belonged. "I want it," I said, my voice firm. "I've always wanted it." Paul nodded, looking relieved, but I wasn't done. "That's a great start," I said, leaning forward now, mirroring Robert's pose. "But let's talk about Evan and Miranda." Robert's eyes narrowed, just a little, and I could tell he was listening hard. "Evan's already gone," he said, his tone flat. "Fired yesterday after that disaster of a meeting. Couldn't explain a balance sheet to save his life. We dug into it, found out the resume we got was yours, not his. Miranda fed us the lie." I nodded, keeping my face calm even though my pulse was racing. "She stole my work," I said, passed it off as is to get him in. "What's happening with her?" Paul shifted again, uncomfortable, but Robert didn't flinch. "She's about to lose a lot more than a relationship," he said, his voice cold. "We're reporting the fraud to our legal team. Could be criminal charges, forgery, misrepresentation. Depends on how far we take it. Criminal charges." The words hung there, heavy and real, and I felt a surge of something dark and satisfying. Miranda in handcuffs, her smug smirk wiped away. That was a picture I could get behind. Good, I said, meeting Robert's gaze. She didn't just screw me over, she screwed you too. She deserves whatever's coming. Robert studied me for a second, then gave a small nod, like he approved. We'll keep you posted, he said. For now, welcome back. I shook their hands, Paul's first, then Robert's, and walked out of that room feeling taller than I had in weeks. The job was mine again, Evan was out, and Miranda was facing the fallout. I took the elevator down, my mind spinning with what this meant. I'd won. Not everything. Not yet, but enough to stand on. As I stepped outside, the morning sun hit me, warm and bright, and I let myself smile, really smile, for the first time since this all started. I got in my car and drove back to Tobias's, the city buzzing around me, but all I could think about was how Miranda's world was cracking. She'd thought she could bury me, but I was climbing out, and she was the one sinking now. When I got to Tobias's, he was home, sprawled on the couch with a beer, his work boots still on. Well, he said, sitting up when he saw me. What happened? I dropped my keys on the table and grinned. I got the job back, I said, and he hooped, jumping up to slap me on the back. Hell yeah, man. Told you she'd mess up. I nodded, still grinning. Evan's fired. They know Miranda lied. They're talking charges, legal stuff. She's done. Tobias laughed, loud and rough, and handed me a beer. To Miranda's reckoning, he said, raising his bottle. I clinked mine against it, the cold glass feeling good in my hand. To her reckoning, I echoed, and took a long sip. This wasn't the end, not yet, but it was close. She'd pushed me too far, and now she was paying for it. I'd make sure of it. I woke up the next morning with a lightness I hadn't felt in weeks, the kind that comes when you know you've finally turned a corner. Tobias's couch was still lumpy, but I didn't care. I'd slept hard, the weight of yesterday's win at Caldwell and Royce sinking in deep. The job was mine again, Evan was out, and Miranda was facing real consequences. I stretched, my back popping, and grabbed my phone off the coffee table. No calls from her, no texts begging me to back off. Good. Let her stew in it. I got up, made coffee in Tobias's beat-up pot, and stood by the window, watching the city wake up. The sun was climbing over the buildings, and for once, it didn't feel like the world was against me. I'd fought back, and I'd won. Part of it, at least. Now it was time to finish this. I spent the morning sorting through my stuff, figuring out what came next. I couldn't stay at Tobias's forever. He'd never say it, but I knew I was cramping his style. I needed a place of my own, a fresh start, but first, I had to deal with the divorce. Those papers Miranda had tossed at me were still sitting somewhere in that house, and signed, and I wasn't about to let her walk away with half of everything after what she'd done. I called my lawyer, a guy named Greg I'd known since college, and laid it all out, the job sabotage, Evan, the fraud Caldwell and Royce was reporting. She's got nothing to stand on, Grant, Greg said, his voice calm but firm. We'll push for everything. House, savings, the works. She's the one who cheated and lied. Courts don't like that. I nodded into the phone, feeling that fire in me grow. Good, I said. I want her to get nothing. Make it happen. He promised to file that afternoon, and I hung up, already picturing her face when she realized she'd lost it all. Word spread fast. By midday, Tobias came home from his shift with news he'd picked up from a buddy who worked downtown. Caldwell and Royce reported the fraud, he said, kicking off his boots and grinning. It's all over the financial circles. Miranda's name is mud. No firm's going to touch her now. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms, a slow smile creeping up. Blacklisted? I asked, and he nodded. Big time. She's done, man. And get this, Evan dumped her. Guy couldn't handle the heat. Bolted as soon as he got canned. I laughed, a real laugh, loud and sharp. Evan was gone, Miranda was ruined, and I was still standing. It was almost too good to believe, but I could feel it. Her world was crumbling, just like Robert Calloway had promised. The divorce hearing came quicker than I expected. Greg worked fast, and a week later, I was sitting in a courtroom, my suit pressed, my hands steady. Miranda was across the room, her hair pulled back tight, her face pale and drawn. No smirk now, no confidence, just a woman who knew she'd played her hand and lost. The judge went through it all, her affair, the fraud, the way she'd sabotaged my career. Greg laid out the evidence, calm and brutal, and I watched her shrink in her seat, her lawyers scrambling to keep up. She didn't fight much, couldn't, really. When the gavel came down, it was over. House was mine. Savings were mine. She got nothing but her clothes and a car she'd bought with her own money years ago. I stood up, shook Greg's hand, and walked out without looking back. I saw her one last time, though, outside the courthouse. She was standing by her car, arms crossed, her eyes red like she'd been crying. I didn't plan to stop, but she called out, her voice cracking. "Grant, wait." I turned, keeping my distance, my face hard. "What?" I said, not giving her an inch. She stepped closer, her hands twisting together. "I never thought you had it in you," she said, almost a whisper. "To fight like this. To win." I stared at her, the woman I'd loved once, the one who'd tried to break me. "You never knew me at all," I said, and laughed. A short, cold sound that made her flinch. "You thought I was weak because I trusted you. That was your mistake." She didn't say anything, just looked down, her shoulders slumping. I turned and walked away, the click of my shoes on the pavement loud in the silence. Driving home, my home now, I felt the weight lift off me completely. The house was mine to keep or sell, the money was mine to rebuild with, and Miranda was out of my life for good. I pulled into the driveway, cut the engine, and sat there, letting it sink in. She'd taken everything, or tried to, but I'd clawed it back, piece by piece. Evan was gone, her career was toast, and she was alone. I'd made sure she felt every bit of what she'd done to me, and it was over. I got out, walked inside, and dropped my keys on the table, the sound echoing in the empty space. It wasn't just a win, it was a clean break. I'd fought, and I'd come out on top. Whatever came next, it'd be mine to build, not hers to tear down. I woke up to sunlight streaming through the window of my new office at Caldwell and Royce, a corner spot on the 10th floor with a view of the city skyline that still took my breath away. It had been a year since the divorce, a year since I'd taken back my life, and I was thriving. The senior financial analyst gig wasn't just a job anymore. It was my proving ground. I'd already led 2 major projects, closed deals that had my name buzzing in the break room, and earned a nod from Robert Calloway himself during last month's board meeting. My colleagues respected me, not just for the work, but for the way I'd handled everything. Miranda, Evan, the whole messy fallout. I'd walked in here a year ago with something to prove, and now I was the guy people came to for advice, the one they trusted to get it done. I leaned back in my chair, sipping coffee from a mug Tobias had given me as a housewarming gift. "World's okayest fighter," it said, and let myself feel it. I'd made it. The house was gone now, sold a few months back. I'd moved into a sleek apartment downtown, closer to work, with big windows and a balcony where I could watch the city hum below. It wasn't home yet, not like the old place had been, but it was mine, every inch of it, and that was enough. I'd kept busy, filling my days with work and my nights with runs along the river or beers with Tobias, who'd taken to calling me the comeback king every chance he got. Life was good, steady, mind a shape. Miranda was a ghost, a name I hadn't heard in months, and I liked it that way. She'd faded into the background, a chapter I'd closed and locked away. Until today, I was sorting through emails when I saw it. An envelope on my desk, tucked under a stack of reports. No stamp, no return address, just my name scrawled across the front in handwriting I recognized instantly. Miranda's. My stomach tightened, not with fear, but with something closer to annoyance. What now? I set my coffee down, picked up the envelope, and turned it over in my hands, debating whether to toss it straight into the shredder. A year ago, I might have opened it right away, let her words get under my skin. But I wasn't that guy anymore. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I slid a finger under the flap, tore it open, and pulled out a single sheet of paper, her neat cursive spilling across it like a confession she couldn't hold back. I sat back, holding it up to the light, and started reading. "Grant," it began, "I lost everything. Evan is gone. My career is ruined. I was wrong about you. You were always stronger than I gave you credit for. I don't expect forgiveness, but I just wanted to say, I regret everything." I read it twice, letting each word sink in, my jaw tightening as I went. She'd lost it all. Evan, her job, her smug little life. And now she was reaching out. What, for pity? For closure? I leaned forward, elbows on the desk, and stared at the letter, picturing her writing it. Was she sitting in some cramped apartment, alone, her hands shaking as she scratched out those words? Or was this just another play, a last-ditch grab at my sympathy? Either way, it didn't matter. I didn't feel sorry for her, not even a flicker. She'd made her choices, and I'd made mine. I thought back to that day outside the courthouse, her red eyes and slumped shoulders, the way she'd whispered she never thought I'd fight. She'd been right about one thing. I'd surprised her. Hell, I'd surprised myself. But that was where her insight ended. She didn't know me, never had, not the real me. The guy who'd stayed late at the office, who'd pushed through every setback, who'd built a life she'd tried to steal. That guy was stronger than she'd ever understand. I folded the letter, running my thumb along the crease, and let out a slow breath. Regret? Sure, she regretted it now, when it was too late, when she'd hit rock bottom. But where was that regret when she was smirking at me, tossing divorce papers like confetti, laughing with Evan on the phone? Nowhere. She'd only cared when it cost her. I stood up, walked to the shredder in the corner of my office, and fed the letter in, watching the blades chew it to bits. The sound was sharp, final, and it felt right. I didn't need her words, her apologies, her anything. She was my past, a shadow I'd outrun, and I wasn't about to let her creep back in. I turned back to my desk, the shredded pieces settling in the bin, and sat down, pulling up my next project, a merger analysis that'd keep me busy all week. Work was my focus now, my future, and I was damn good at it. Miranda could wallow all she wanted. I was done carrying her weight. As the day wore on, I threw myself into the numbers, the rhythm of it calming me. Tobias texted around lunch, asking if I wanted to grab a beer later, and I shot back a quick yeah. Life moved forward, and I moved with it. Miranda's letter was gone, just like her hold on me, and I wasn't looking back. I'd built something new, something solid, and no one, not her, not Evan, not anyone, was going to take it away. By the time I left the office, the sun was setting, painting the sky orange and gold. I stepped onto the street, my breath fogging in the cool air, and felt free, really free, for the first time in years. This was my win, my new beginning, and I was just getting started. I stood on the balcony of my apartment, the city sprawling out below me, lights twinkling like stars against the dark. It was late, the air crisp and biting, but I didn't mind. I liked the way it cleared my head. A year ago, I'd been a wreck, sitting in my car outside the house, reeling from Miranda's betrayal, wondering how I'd pick up the pieces. Now I was here, in a place I'd carved out for myself, with a job I loved and a life that felt like mine again. The letter from her yesterday had stirred something up, not regret or anger, but a kind of quiet satisfaction. She'd lost everything, just like she'd tried to make me lose everything, and I'd come out on top. I'd shredded her words, let them go, but they'd lingered in my mind all day, a final echo of the past I'd buried. Tonight, though, I was ready to let it all rest. I leaned against the railing, my hands wrapped around a mug of coffee, the warmth seeping into my fingers. The street below hummed with life. Cars rolling by, people laughing as they spilled out of bars, but up here, it was just me and the night. I thought about her letter again, those shaky lines about regret and losing Evan, and I wondered where she was now. Some rundown place across town, maybe, scraping by on whatever she could find after the blacklist hit. I didn't care enough to check, didn't want to know. She'd made her bed, and I wasn't the one lying in it anymore. I took a sip of coffee, the bitter taste grounding me, and let my mind drift back to how it had all ended. The courthouse, the divorce, the way she'd looked at me like I was a stranger. She'd been right about that much. I wasn't the guy she'd married, the one who'd trusted her blindly. I was better now, stronger, and she'd never see that coming. The memory of shredding her letter stuck with me, the sound of the machine slicing through her words. It wasn't just paper I destroyed, it was the last tie she had to me, the last chance she'd get to pull me back into her mess. I'd read it twice, let it sink in, then let it go. No second thoughts, no hesitation. She didn't deserve my forgiveness, and I didn't owe her a damn thing. I set the mug down on the railing, watching the steam curl up into the cold air, and felt a weight I hadn't even noticed lift off me. That was it. The last goodbye, not to her, but to the part of me that had held on to the hurt. I was done with it, done with her, and it felt good. I stepped back inside, the warmth of the apartment wrapping around me, and grabbed my phone off the counter. Tobias had texted earlier, asking if I'd be up for a game night at his place tomorrow. Cards, beer, the usual. I shot back a quick, "Count me in," smiling at the thought. He'd been there through it all, the late-night talks, the plans, the victories, and I owed him more than I could say. Life was simpler now, cleaner, with people I could trust and a job that kept me sharp. I glanced around the place. Bare walls still waiting for pictures, a couch I'd picked out myself, a stack of books on the coffee table. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and that was all I needed. I'd rebuilt from nothing, and every piece of this life was a win she couldn't touch. I thought about the past year, how I'd thrown myself into work, into proving I was more than what she'd tried to make me. Caldwell and Royce had become my anchor, the place where I'd found my footing again. Robert Calloway had taken me aside a few weeks back, clapped me on the shoulder, and said, "You're one of the best we've got, Grant. Keep it up." That had stuck with me, not just the praise, but the trust behind it. I'd earned it, fought for it, and no one, not Miranda, not Evan, could take it away. I walked to the kitchen, rinsed my mug, and set it in the sink, the routine of it calming me. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, but I wasn't tired. I felt awake, alive, like I'd finally shaken off the last of her shadow. Standing there, I realized something. This wasn't just about surviving her betrayal anymore. It was about winning, really winning, on my terms. She tried to break me, to steal my future and hand it to someone else, but I'd taken it back and made it better. I didn't need her regret, didn't need her to see me succeed. I'd done it for myself, and that was enough. I walked back to the balcony, stepped out again, and looked up at the sky, the stars faint against the city glow. This was my victory, hard-earned and mine alone. I inhaled the cold air, let it fill my lungs, and felt free, freer than I'd ever been with her. I stayed out there a while, the night stretching on, my mind quiet for once. Miranda was gone, a footnote in a story I'd rewritten. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, more projects, more nights with Tobias, maybe something new, but I was ready for it. I'd faced the worst she could throw at me and come out stronger, and no one could take that away. I picked up my mug, empty now, and headed inside, locking the balcony door behind me. The apartment was silent, peaceful, and I climbed into bed, the sheets cool against my skin. As I closed my eyes, I didn't think about her, didn't picture her letter or her face. I thought about the morning ahead, the work waiting, the life I'd built. This was mine, all of it, and I was done looking back.